So today's video is going to be Winter Sowing 101. This is actually only my 4th year winter sowing. I do not claim to be an expert at this. Each year I learn a little bit more. The first year, I think I only did, 15 to 20 jugs. I will link my playlist. I have a winter sowing playlist. I've done a couple videos where I kind of like this one today, but maybe not as thorough. I'm going to try to be a little more thorough today. And then I've also done 3, I think, reveals. I've done 3 reveals where I open up the jugs and show you what happened inside them over the winter. I guess I should introduce myself. My name is Jen. I live in it's northeastern West Virginia. It's right on the border of Maryland. It's like 6B, 7A zone. So today's video, what I want to do is not to try to intimidate you by throwing a ton of information at you, but I am. But at the same time, I wanted to maybe help you not make the same mistakes that I did. So I'm going to give you tips and tricks, do's and don'ts, all that good stuff, and just make it a little bit more attainable, because if you go and do some research, it can be a bit overwhelming, and they say, don't do this, this is not good, blah, blah, blah. So if you're like me, sometimes you'll develop analysis paralysis, where you just start to think way too hard about what it is you're doing. And this is easy. So I really just want to encourage you to try winter sowing. Just start with maybe 5 jugs and go from there. Like I said, I started out with just, I think it was 15 to 20, and then every year I keep adding to it. I am probably going to be doing, you see all the seeds right here in front of me. Some of these I'm going to go through a little bit closer and not do all of them, but I'm probably going to do 200 jugs this year. So once you get the hang of it, it's easy to kind of add to it, and you just get more comfortable with it. That's with anything. So I hope to make this just seem more feasible for you to just give it a try, because it is so much fun. It's so rewarding. I get excited every time I go out to check on my jugs. I've prepared a bunch of my jugs. I have, 70 or 80 more waiting in the garage for me, but they're frozen right now because today's date is January 20th. This is around the time every single year I end up having the time to winter sow. I always say I'm going to start right after the new year. It never happens. It seems like this is the weekend or next weekend where I end up finishing my winter sowing. But basically they say you can start your winter sowing at the winter solstice, so around December 20th, which you can. Basically everything I have in front of me now is what you need. So you need tags, you need tape, you need jugs, you need soil, and you need to make sure you have a pen to label. And seeds. So that's really all you need for winter sowing. But I'm going to go a little bit more in depth on each of these things, okay? So number 1 mistake I personally made, and I would like to help you avoid doing it. So that's the number 1 thing I'm going to talk about, is winter sowing at the wrong time, and most importantly, winter sowing the wrong things. 2 words: hardy, tender. 2 words that you just want to think about whenever you are picking out the stuff that you want to winter sow. I'm going to show you what I got laying here. So in the years that I've winter sown, I did not do any research. I don't know what video I watched or whatever. I made a list of things that every year did not do well for me, right? Either there could be different reasons for that. Either the seeds weren't great, or it just wasn't hardy enough. So I've compiled a list to make this easy for you. Just remember the word hardy. If it's a hardy perennial or hardy annual, those are the things that most likely will be very good to winter sow. If it's a tender annual, you just want to wait till it warms up a bit. Because what can tend to happen, at least in my zone, things can sometimes, they will germinate, but then you'll get another freeze and it'll kill them off. Those tend to just do better to start after it warms up. Like in my zone, tender annuals should probably be started not till, I don't know, mid-April, beginning of May, something like that. So that's mistake number one, starting stuff that just is not gonna do well. So tender annuals. If you see tender annuals on your seed packet, don't winter sow them. They're probably not gonna do that great. They may sprout, but they're probably gonna be killed if you get a cold snap. Second thing I'm gonna talk about is containers. So I have my preference. So someone said to me one time, I'm an overthinker. And to just think about stuff as good, better, best. There's always the good way to do it. There's the better way, and then there's the best way. And none of those are the wrong way. So just stop overthinking, right? So if you look up winter sowing, and I will link, because I'm a part of it's called Winter Sowing for Beginners Facebook group. I really like it. Lots of people ask tons of questions, and the people on there answer the questions. It's a good place to go for information if you're a winter sowing newbie. So if you go on there, there will be people to say that you want to use translucent jugs, not transparent. So the difference between translucent and translucent allows some light to go through. So that's like your milk jugs. Transparent would be what I'm using. It allows all the light to go through. You can see through it. I like these jugs, and for a very simple reason. The handles. So I can pick up 6 of these, sometimes 8 of these at a time, and move them around. Move them where I want to take them. Because they're kind of box-like, square, they're easier to cut and easier to tape. So simple reasons, but that's why I like them. And this might not be the best, but it does just fine. Some containers, and you can use all kinds of containers. I've seen Ziploc baggies. I tried it, I didn't care for it because the Ziploc baggies move too easily. And so if you squish your seeds around too much, they might not germinate. So I don't like to use those. I've seen just giant like storage totes, but there's some containers I don't think are good to use, and that would be like to-go containers from like restaurants. They're too shallow, because that brings me to another tip, is that you want to make sure you use enough soil in your container. So if you have a little to-go container that only has this much soil in it, your roots, once they get going, aren't gonna have anywhere to go, and you're gonna get root bound. If you're planning on leaving your winter sowing out for X amount of time, you wanna have at least, I say 2 to 4 inches, depending on what it is you're growing. The next thing that you don't want to forget to do is to allow drainage. So one thing I'm doing differently this year, which I've done in the past, so I'm just trying it out. So like I said, winter sowing can sometimes be just experimentation. Sometimes you got to find what works for you. So in the past, when I put drainage holes in my containers, I put four holes in each corner of my jug. So in each one of these corners, I put holes. But this year, I'm just going to do 1 hole right in the center there for it to drain. So there's kind of a balance, I think. You don't want to do too much drainage. You don't want to do too little drainage. Too much drainage and your containers are going to dry out. It's another don't. You don't want your containers to either be too wet or too dry. So you got to kind of keep an eye on them, right? I am terrible at watering stuff. That is a big, if you've been with me long, you know, I'm not much of a waterer. So I'm thinking less holes, less drainage. I won't have to water as often. So we'll see how that works for me this year. And whatever container you're using, you want to make sure that the snow or the rain or whatever has a place to get into it. So you leave the cap off of it. If you do end up using something that has a flat bottom, let me go grab something and I'll show you as an example. Okay, so last year I used some of these, but you'd want to put holes. You wouldn't want to leave this giant lid off. You'd want to just put a bunch of holes in the top of it. That way the snow and the rain can get down inside these kinds of containers. So you can even use, like, what was this one? Kettle Corn Crunch. So those would work well too, but like I said, I've collected a bunch of these. These are my favorite because of the handles. So I am going to end up using these for something different, I think. The next no-no or tip would be you want to make sure you use a light, fluffy potting mix. You don't want to use anything heavy. seeds need something light to germinate in. I made the mistake one year of mixing in some compost with some of my jugs because I thought, well, it'll feed the plants, right? But it was a little too heavy, and there were certain seeds. Now, some stuff did germinate. It wasn't like a total fail using compost mixed with my seed starting mix. But there's some seeds that I think were hindered because of the compost that it was in. So this year, I'm not going to use any compost. I'm going to be using, let me show you. So this is my big giant tub that I use to put all my seed starting mix in and then moisten it, because I like to start with moist seed starting mix, or dampened. Some people don't like that word moist. Sorry if you're one of them. Yeah, so I got this big giant one. I will link it below. I think it's from Amazon or Walmart. I'm not even sure. This goes a long, long way. It's a little pricey, but it's got nutrition in it, and it's organic, and it's got the Myco Active, which is really good for your soil. But this is what I'm using for all of my winter sowing this year. Like I said, every year I do things a little differently, trial and error. I kind of like to do that. The one year I used compost, I found that wasn't great. One year I used my own seed starting mix that I sterilized. There was no nutrition in it for the plants, so they just kind of didn't do very well. One year I made up my own seed starting mix with perlite, vermiculite, and then added some fertilizer, peat moss. I did that. I'm just kind of making it a little simpler on myself this year. So making it up yourself, it's a little cheaper. There's videos on that. You have to buy the materials in bulk. It ends up being a lot cheaper if you're doing a ton of stuff. But this year, I'm just kind of going with that stuff. I may end up later on, when I go to start all my tomato seeds, which is going to be a lot, I may end up making my own again. But for now, I ain't got the time, so I'm just going to use that stuff. And then, like I had said before, you know, you want to do between 2 and 4 inches. Most of mine have, I think, about 3 inches worth of soil. Some of them a little bit more. But that's about the amount that roots need in their, you know, seedling stages. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do now, while I flap my jaw and tell you some more tips and tricks, I'm going to start some of my winter sowing. And you can just kind of watch and see how easy it is. All right, I just realized, well, my daughter realized, I wasn't even recording that clip. So let me tell you again what I just did. I think I sat down here and I told you I've used duct tape in the past to seal my containers up because you're going to end up taping them. I'm not going to show me cutting them or putting the holes in them with I have like a soldering tool. Like I said, I'll link my old videos. I have shown that in those videos before. I've used duct tape, it works fine, but I like the clear tape because you can see through the clear tape through the jugs and see what's sprouting. All right, the next thing I talked about when I wasn't recording is that I was going to start cilantro seeds. Cilantro seeds are a bigger size seed, which is nice, they're easier to handle, but you're gonna have seeds that are like powder fine. And there are certain ones that will say to surface sow them. What that means is just sprinkle them on the top and you don't cover them with soil. Because there are certain ones that need light to germinate. So they actually have to have the sun hitting the seed to germinate. But most seeds, you're gonna wanna cover with more of your potting mix. And the rule of thumb is, however big the seed, twice as much soil on the top of it. You do not want to overbury your seeds. Each seed has a coating. That coating is all the nutrition that seedling will have to emerge from the soil. If you bury it too far and it doesn't have enough energy to get up through the surface, you just won't see it. So don't bury them. Twice as much soil as the seed is big, okay? So then I took my cilantro seeds and I sprinkled them about in here. You want to start with the flat surface, so I pressed my soil down, not a whole lot, just enough to pat it down to a flat surface, and then I sprinkled the seeds. I'm going to show you, and then I'm going to show you how much soil I put on top. And the amount of seeds, I may have talked about this too, depends on how many seedlings you want. I don't overthink it. If I only have a few seeds, I only put a few seeds in here. If I have a lot of seeds, I'll put a lot. I will plant using like the clumping method. Just take clumps of this out and plant it all over my garden. But that's the amount of seeds I'm going to use. And then I'm going to take just a little, and then I just kind of do this until I can't see them anymore. And then press that down a little bit. That's it. Okay, I almost forgot to do this. I was getting ready to tape it up. Another no-no is don't forget to stick a label inside. If you label on the outside, which I do both, I put a tag on the inside. You'll see this already has some words on it. I try to reuse like my tags several times. So I'll just cross off that, and then I'm gonna write what I'm starting. I'm starting confetti cilantro. Stick it down in a corner of the jug. So you don't want to forget that step, because if you label just the outside, the elements can sometimes wear off your writing. Now I do like to label the outside. These are the pens that I love using. These are fantastic. They're Sharpie Industrial. I had someone that put me on these a few years ago, and they work great. As you can see, a lot of my tags still have the visible label on them. The sun doesn't wear them away. The rain, the cold, the heat, Industrial Sharpie is the way to go. You'll see on a lot of my jugs, some of them have the label, and some of them don't. Like I said, there's always good, better, best. Would it be ideal to take this off so that the light gets in it? Sure. But I'm not gonna do that. I find they germinate just fine, and after a year of being outside, these labels will peel off themselves. When I go to rip the tape off at the end of the season, the label comes with it. So I will reuse my jugs. That's another tip. Good, better, best. Another one. Here's another one I'm going to tell you. The best thing to do would be to clean your jugs out every year. I'm not going to do that. I don't do that. There's different bacterias and different things that could possibly be in your soil. And then when you go to start seeds the next year, if your jugs aren't clean, I'm not too worried about that. So I just don't do it. I'm just going to let you guys know that that would be the best thing for you to do, but I'm too lazy to do that. I reuse my jugs dirty and I'm okay with that. I reuse pretty much everything dirty. Maybe someday I'll pay for that and I'll learn my lesson, but that day hasn't come yet, so I'm going to keep pressing my luck. But like I said, best would be clean your jugs. If you want to do that, you have the time to do that, you're only doing a few, go for it. And like I said, I like these jugs because they're easy to tape. Taping the milk jugs, because of their odd shape, not as easy. You want to seal it up really well. I usually go around a couple of times. And I buy these packaging tapes in bulk. I'll link, I think I get them in like a 6-pack. But, you know, it's all going to be depending on how many jugs you sow. The next step that I like to do with labeling is I label the outside too. So, confetti cilantro. All right. And I will number it. So this was the first one. And just for quick reference, year after year, I like to keep notes on stuff that I start. All the tomatoes I start, all the peppers I start, all the winter sowing I start. So I will write down, oh, I don't even have a pen. So I'm going to put winter sowing 2025. And the first one I did was confetti cilantro. All right. So I'm just going to keep doing that. And then we'll talk about, after you're done the actual process of sowing them, what to do with them after that. All right, so next thing I'm going to sow is Fildekraut cabbage. Fildekraut. I'm going to do 1,000 head kale. Uzbek carrot. Uzbek golden carrot. All right, so carrots are one that you surface sow. So you're going to just put it on the soil. And then this says lightly press. Let me get these all sealed up. One more trick that I like to do is, if I have seeds left, make sure they're sealed back up, and then I will put all the things that I've already started in a Ziploc baggie. So when it comes time to do the reveal, and say some certain things did not germinate, I'll go back into this bag, so I won't put anything away. I'll have the bag full of everything I winter sowed, and I'll just come back to the bag and pick out those things that maybe I want to restart a little closer to the warmer months. Because there's different reasons why things don't germinate. Every year, I have a few failures. And sometimes I just have, you know, old seeds that just are done for. Sometimes maybe the seeds got put in the soil too far. Different things happen. I still make mistakes. It's okay. This is just how I keep track of everything that I've winter sowed, and it's easy to go back and find. And then when I'm finally finished at the end of the season, which I didn't do it this year, I just actually put up a video of me organizing my seed stash, and I was putting away my bag full of winter sowing. So that's okay. It's okay. All right, now that I've got 4 of them done, I'm gonna give you some more tips. I don't know if y'all caught what I just did there, but I'm gonna fit this clip in here of me fixing my mistakes. See, I still make mistakes. In my haste to get this video done, I gotta remember the steps. So you saw me tape these up before I put soil on top of the filterkraut and the kale, which needs to have soil on top. So I put some of my potting mix on top, and now I'm going to retape them and relabel them. But I wanted to say this. I don't think I ever explained what's happening in the winter sowing, what's going on. It's basically you're creating a very mini greenhouse for your seeds. I used to overthink starting seeds so much. But the truth is, seeds want to grow. Now, there are seeds that want to grow more than other seeds. So some things are a little more finicky than others. But once I started to think about the whole process of just nature doing it in itself, it sort of made more sense to me. So think of it this way. If you left, I like to think of it like with a pumpkin, right? So there was one year, let me finish doing this because it's loud. There was one year where we had pumpkins, and this was before I started composting, before I started gardening for food, where we had pumpkins that we used for Halloween decorations, and then we just kicked them over the hill. Well, come next spring, plants emerged, right? I didn't do anything. I just kicked a whole pumpkin over a hill. What happened was it eventually rotted. All of the flesh, either animals came and ate it, or it just kind of composted down, which is what I do with my pumpkins now. I compost them. And then what was left was the seeds. They sat there all winter long. So they went through the whole winter stratification process, which some stuff needs, some does, some doesn't. In nature, the stuff outside, even if it doesn't need cold stratification, it's going to go most of the time through that process if you're in a colder climate. Eventually, the rain starts to come down and works those seeds enough into the soil that they're covered. And then when the temperature is right, when the time is right, those seeds will sprout. So nature can create plants without us doing anything, with just the elements. So when I started thinking of that, like with flowers, you know how flower seeds fall off flowers and then they get scattered by the wind. Eventually the rain puts them down into the ground, and then you get flowers when the time is right again, when the temperatures are right for those seeds. Sometimes I think we overthink all of this stuff when you don't really need to. So that's kind of what's happening with these. You're just putting them in the dirt. I say dirt, but I mean like potty mix soil. You definitely don't want to use your native soil that's in your yard. I don't think I mentioned that. Don't use dirt, soil. Don't use that. I think I mentioned compost, but definitely don't go outside and dig up a pile of dirt. Might some seeds germinate? Maybe, but they'll do a lot better in potting mix. Yeah, you're just creating a little mini greenhouse when all of the elements are right in here, from the soil to the moisture to the sun hitting the container, creating a little mini greenhouse. When the temperature's right in here, the seeds will sprout. And I think that is so fun. So I keep doing it year after year. All right, let me pick up my jugs. We did those 4. See how I can hold 4 jugs in my hand? Love that. I love that. Okay, so we're headed outside and I'm going to show you where I place mine and why. All right, outside it is frigid. It's like 17 degrees and we just got, I don't know, 6 inches of snow yesterday. So I'm on my back deck. Best place that they say to put your winter sowing jugs is on the northern side of your house. So that would be over there, on that side of the house, over there. I do not walk past that part of the house hardly at all in the winter. So these jugs would never get looked at. And for me, out of sight, out of mind, okay? And I would forget to water them. So I'm gonna do good, not best. So when you come out my door, this is my deck. It's like the Taj Mahal of decks. There's this level, which last year I had a bunch of jugs right here. That's fine. And then I had a bunch of jugs over here sitting, which I think is where I'm going to start placing these. All right, so I'm going to press them down into and I put mine nice and close together. Another reason I love these jugs is that they don't tip over hardly at all. That's another tip, is you need to protect your jugs from being tipped over. If a dog or any kind of animals, something is going to be knocking them around, you're going to knock your seeds around, and then they might not germinate because they might not be where they're placed. I had that happen with a few jugs last year, the round ones. That's another reason why I'm not using them this year, is because the wind was blowing them over a lot. Whereas the wind does not seem to be able to blow over these square jugs. So, like I said, this isn't the best place for me to put my jugs, but I'm going to be walking past them a lot and remembering, oh, I have winter sowing jugs. I should check and see if I need to water them. So that's why I'm not doing the north side of my house. If you want to do the best thing and put them on the north side of your house and that's where you walk past, you'll remember that they're there, whatever, you do you. Another thing as far as protection is there's going to be certain flowers and things that can take a light frost, but if you're expecting a really hard frost and you've seen that your seeds have already germinated, you want to cover them with a blanket. Usually I'll do that after the sun or whatever has warmed them up, before the sun completely goes down and it gets really cold. I will drop a blanket, a tarp, a sheet, whatever, to kind of hold that heat in until the next morning when I'll go and, checking the temperatures, take it off, because you don't want to cook your seedlings either. So you kind of have to watch the weather a little bit. Okay, I had to come back inside because it is cold. I was trying to tell you out there about why I put them on my deck. Hopefully Mother Nature will do its job and there'll be some snow. But during like the colder months, you don't have to water as much because there's not as much evaporation. But you do want to keep the soil damp. But there's a lot of, like, there'll be like 2 or 3 weeks that go by in the cold months where I don't water. But when you start, if you do need to water and you've just planted your seeds, you want to do it lightly. So you don't want to stick the sprayer hose directly on the top of whatever it is and just like jet stream the water on it. You're going to dislodge your seedlings. You're going to just move them around. They might fall all into a corner. So you want to use like just this, the like shower, and just be standing like over your jugs and have it kind of like rainfall getting into there. Now, once your seedlings have sprouted and they look nice and sturdy, I have in the past taken my sprayer and just put it on the top and just like until I see the water soaking down and coming out from the bottom. So later on, when it starts to get, the sun is like warmer and the days are hotter. So for me, that's like April, May, I'll water more and more often. All right, so I came back out to demonstrate. So you'd want it to be like shower. Put it on the shower setting there, and then like pretend I have like 100 jugs here. And then I just sit here and I shower them before they sprout. Now, when they have sprouted and you can see a bunch of the green and the seedlings look big enough to take it, I will just put it on jet and just into each jug. Or you could do it the same way, shower, but you know, I want to be quick about it and make sure that they're good and watered. Another reason why I keep the jugs up here, because I have a hose that I can bring up onto my deck and water them easily. Not that I couldn't over there, so that would be the north side of my house. It's just I wouldn't remember. I would not remember because I wouldn't think about it because I wouldn't be seeing my jugs. So the last thing I want to talk about is when you open your jugs. You don't want to open them too soon. So that's another kind of juggling act, as to figuring out when you want to open them and plant them. Now, like I had said, cold crops, lettuce, cabbage, broccoli, anything that can take a freeze. There's certain things that can take a frost, certain things that can take a freeze. Anything that can take a freeze, you can open those up when it's still freezing and plant them. They'll take the freeze, they'll be fine. But if you're opening up something that cannot take a freeze, you open them and then it freezes. So you want to wait till after your last frost. You're going to kill your stuff. So be mindful of that. Pay attention to the weather. Like I said, it's a juggling act. And sometimes I even get burned, but it happens. But remember, good, better, best. So the last thing that I'm going to tell you about is one of the benefits to winter sowing, and is that you don't have to harden off. If you're anyone that has started seeds indoors, you know the hardening off process can be a pain in the butt. So if you're not familiar with hardening off, what that is when you start things inside, you need to acclimate them to the sun. If you take them directly outside after being inside for even if like 4 or 5 days of not seeing sunlight, they'll burn, just like you and I will after winter's over and we go outside for the first time and think that all is hunky-dory, and you come back inside red as a apple. At least for me, that's what happens. You don't have to harden off your winter sowing because it's already sitting outside. It's already getting hit by the sun. That's one thing I thought the first year I winter sowed, is that I still needed to acclimate them. You don't need to do that. They get enough UV light that they are already prepared for when the jugs are open. So no need to harden off. That's another plus for winter sowing your things. So I'm going to sit down here now and I am going to winter sow the rest of these jugs. And then I have another wave, like I said, out in the garage. They're frozen. I'm going to bring them in to thaw and I'll winter sow all of those tomorrow. And then I'll have my winter sowing done and I can just sit back and relax and wait for things to sprout. Now, if you don't subscribe to me, please subscribe, because I will be giving updates. I do vlogs and things like that, take you along with me during my day, and I'll show you like the watering and all that, how I do things. So please subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a video. I'll also probably be giving updates in my Facebook group, Gardening Lovers Collective and Swap. So if you're not a part of that group yet, definitely go and sign up to be a member in that group, because you'll probably see a lot of winter sowing stuff happening from me in there. And I hope this was helpful. I hope this has inspired you to give winter sowing a try. I hope I didn't make it sound too difficult. I hope that I made it seem very doable because it's a lot of fun. Yeah, my goal here wasn't to overwhelm you with information, so I hope I didn't do that. So one clip I wanted to put in here, in this pile of stuff, you're not going to see any squash, pumpkin. You're not going to see tomatoes, peppers, all of those things are actually considered tender annuals, at least in my zone. So I don't winter sow those kinds of things. I just start seeds in little pots later on, or direct sow, like pumpkins and squash, zucchini. A lot of those do really well with just direct sowing. I don't do sugar snap peas. You could, because that is a cold crop, but I find that they do just fine germinating when direct sown. So those are a few things that I just don't. So anything that would be considered like a summer crop, I'm not going to winter sow it, because I run the risk of it getting nice and warm, they germinate, and then I get another hard freeze and they will be killed. So please let me know in the comments if you are winter sowing, what you're winter sowing. If this is your first time winter sowing, I want to hear from you. Let me know if I've inspired you to winter sow. Until the next one, I hope you all enjoy your day. Bye.